Why was no one at the briefing table looking at her? Kira Ashford stood at the back of the operations room, helmet tucked under her arm, boots dusted with Afghan dirt, breathing slow enough to keep her hands steady. Around her, voices overlapped, experienced officers, hardened operators, men who had survived 3, 4, sometimes 5 deployments. Maps glowed on the wall. Red markers crawled across valleys and ridgelines. And still, no one said her name. She was 18. Too young, some thought. Too quiet. Too ordinary looking for the reputation already beginning to trail behind her. She didn't speak unless spoken to. That was how she'd learned to survive long before the army, on a Montana ranch where words didn't save cattle from drought and complaining didn't stop the bank from circling. Out there you worked. You endured. You didn't ask the land for mercy. 6 months earlier she'd been stacking hay under a punishing sun, her grandfather's old Winchester resting against a fence post like a forgotten relic. 800 yards away, a jackrabbit had lifted its head. The shot had been instinctive, clean, final. She hadn't known then that everything would lead here. The briefing officer finally glanced her way, just once, a pause too small for anyone else to notice. "Overwatch team," he said. "You'll hold Hill 472. Kira nodded. That was it. No praise, no warning, no acknowledgement of what she could do. As she moved out with her team, she felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear, exactly. Something closer to responsibility. The kind that didn't care how old you were. She remembered her grandfather's compass, the brass worn smooth by hands long gone. True aim serves the heart. She didn't yet know what that would cost her. What does it feel like to wait for a life to cross your scope? The wind was steady, the distance brutal. Kira lay prone behind her rifle, body aligned with the earth, breath slowed to something ancient. Her spotter murmured numbers beside her, but she already felt the correction forming in her bones. The world narrowed until there was only the reticle and the man moving below, an insurgent coordinator whose name she didn't know, whose life was already collapsing into geometry. She hesitated, not because she doubted the shot, because she understood it. That was the burden no one prepared her for, the awareness that killing was easy, but deciding was not. When she squeezed the trigger, the rifle recoiled like it always did. The bullet traveled farther than most people ever would in their lives. The man fell. The radio went silent. Then chaos. Cheers crackled through headsets. Orders snapped into place. The mission surged forward, momentum restored. Somewhere, lives were saved. Kira didn't celebrate. She stared through the scope long after the body stopped moving. That night she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The face stayed with her, not as an enemy, not as a target, but as a human being who had existed 1 second too long. Her spotter sat with her in silence, offering nothing but presence. "You did your job," he said finally. She nodded. But the job had changed her. Why did her hands shake only after the shooting stopped? The second mission came faster, and the third. Word spread, quietly, the kind of whispers that moved faster than official reports. The 18-year-old rookie, the Montana girl, the one who didn't miss. Command began asking for her by name. And something inside her shifted. Confidence crept in, not loudly but dangerously, a sense that her instincts were enough, that hesitation was weakness, that she could see what others couldn't. Then came the compound. The target description was vague, too vague, older male, limp, gray beard. She found him through the scope, he fit. Her spotter hesitated, confirm again. Annoyance flickered, just for a second. "I've got him." The shot broke. Perfect. And wrong. The child reached the body first. The screaming cut through everything. Radio traffic exploded. Civilian, elder, goat herder. Kira dropped the rifle like it had burned her. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't hear. She had done what she was trained to do, fast, decisive, lethal, and it had destroyed something she could never put back together. That night she vomited behind the barracks, cried until her chest hurt, pressed the compass into her palm until the edges dug into her skin. True aim serves the heart. Her heart felt broken beyond repair. What happens when a weapon learns regret? They grounded her, not as punishment, as protection. Psych evaluations, long talks, silence stretched into days. She replayed the moment endlessly, searching for the exact second where humility should have stepped in. Her commander finally sat across from her, eyes tired but kind. "You're not a monster," he said. "You're human, that's why this hurts." She wasn't sure that was enough. When they cleared her to return, she felt different behind the rifle, slower, more careful, each shot weighed like a promise she might fail to keep. And yet she was better. Not deadlier, wiser. The war didn't reward wisdom often, but on the ridge overlooking a convoy pinned down by crossfire, it mattered. She waited longer than anyone liked. Let the wind settle, let the target move fully clear. One shot, then another. No civilians harmed, no mistakes. That night her spotter nodded once, respect quiet and earned. She finally slept. Why did the most important shot come when no one was watching? The mission wasn't marked high priority. No cameras, no command observers. Just a patrol caught in a bad place, with no good options left. The enemy sniper had them locked down, experienced, patient. Kira felt him before she saw him. A presence, a tension in the air. She adjusted, not by calculation but by something deeper. The shot she took crossed distance, wind, history. When it landed, the firefight ended. Later, no one asked her age. No one questioned her place. They just said, "Good work." She sat alone afterward, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, compass resting in her hand. She finally understood her grandfather's silence. Some things you carry alone. What remains after the war stops listening? Kira returned home changed in ways no parade could explain. The ranch still stood, the land still breathed. Her rifle leaned against the same fence post. She didn't touch it for a long time. But when she did, it wasn't with hunger or pride. It was with respect. She had learned that strength wasn't pulling the trigger. It was knowing when not to. Somewhere, the world would remember the shot that changed the war. But she would remember the ones she chose not to take. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did her breath catch, just as the wind finally went still? Kira Ashford had been taught that silence was never empty. On the ranch, it meant a storm was building. In the mountains, it meant an animal was watching you back. And now, lying prone on Afghan stone with her cheek pressed into the rifle stock, silence meant the world was deciding whether it would let her live with what came next. The valley below looked deceptively calm. Low mud-walled compounds, a dry riverbed cutting the earth like a scar, children's voices drifting faintly upward, carried by the afternoon heat. Nothing about it looked like a battlefield until you knew where to look. Her spotter lay beside her, motionless except for the slight rise and fall of his chest. He had stopped whispering numbers. He knew she had them already. The target stepped into view. Kira felt the shift inside herself before she consciously saw him. Her body recognized patterns her mind hadn't named yet. The way the man moved, careful, rehearsed. The weight of the rifle he carried, not slung casually like a farmer's tool but balanced, ready. This wasn't someone passing through. This was someone waiting. Her heart didn't race. That came later. Right now everything slowed. Her breath found the rhythm her grandfather had drilled into her when she was barely tall enough to see over the fence rails. Inhale, half exhale, hold. The wind flags downrange barely twitched. Too perfect, she thought. and that scared her more than bad conditions ever could. She hesitated, not because she doubted the shot, but because she understood it. The radio crackled softly in her ear. The patrol was exposed. Every second mattered. "Overwatch," the lieutenant whispered. "If you have it, take it." Kira closed one eye. The reticle settled. For a moment, a single fragile moment, she wondered who this man was when he wasn't a silhouette through glass. Whether he had learned to shoot from a father the way she had from her grandfather. Whether someone somewhere would feel the absence she was about to create. Then training overrode thought. The trigger broke. The recoil came back into her shoulder, familiar and controlled. The bullet traveled farther than most people ever would in their lives. Through the scope, she saw the man crumple. No drama, no sound she could hear from this distance, just a body folding into dust. "Target down," her spotter said quietly. The patrol moved. Orders flew. The machine of war resumed its grinding motion. Kira stayed still. Her hands didn't shake, not yet. That came later, when the adrenaline drained away and left something hollow behind. The first kill is supposed to feel like something, they said. Some said relief, some said triumph, some said nothing at all. Kira felt weight. It settled on her chest slowly, like a heavy blanket she hadn't asked for but couldn't push away. She stayed on overwatch until the patrol cleared the area, her eyes scanning, her mind cataloging movement, threat, distance. She did her job with mechanical precision. Only when they were ordered to exfil did she finally lift her face from the rifle. The world rushed back in all at once. Heat, smell, sound. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, suddenly loud enough to feel embarrassing. As they moved back along the ridgeline, her spotter glanced at her once. Not long, not probing. Just a look that said, "I saw it too." Back at the forward base, the debrief was brief. Numbers, coordinates, confirmation. No one asked how she felt. They never did. She was 18 years old, sitting in a folding chair inside a plywood room that smelled like dust and coffee, listening to officers talk about her shot like it was a line item on a spreadsheet. Clean engagement. Excellent discipline. Saved lives. All true. None of it helped. That night she lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. Not the shot, but the second before it. The hesitation. The flicker of thought she hadn't been trained to have. Her hands finally began to shake. She pressed them together, fingers interlaced, trying to still them. It didn't work. Her breath came shallow, uneven. She rolled onto her side and pulled the small brass compass from her pocket. The metal was warm from her body. The needle trembled, then settled, pointing north with unarguable certainty. True aim serves the heart. She had always thought that meant skill guided by purpose. Now she wondered if it was a warning. The second mission came sooner than she expected. 3 days later, before the weight of the first had fully settled. This one was different. Night operation, poor visibility, uncertain intel. The kind of mission that made experienced soldiers swear under their breath and rookies nod like they understood more than they did. Kira felt the anxiety coil in her stomach as they took position. Night magnified everything. Sounds carried farther. Shadows moved when nothing else did. The scope showed heat signatures instead of faces, bodies reduced to glowing shapes that felt less real and somehow more terrifying. She missed Montana nights then. The cold, the stars sharp enough to hurt your eyes, the way darkness there felt honest. Here, darkness hid things. The target appeared briefly, then vanished behind cover. "Hold," her spotter whispered. She held. Seconds stretched, her muscles burned, sweat slid down her spine despite the cool air. Then movement, wrong movement. A shape smaller than expected, too fast, too unsteady. "Don't take it," the spotter murmured instantly. Kira froze. The figure resolved into a child darting between buildings, carrying something long and metal. For one terrible second, her brain tried to complete the pattern, to turn it into a threat. She forced herself to breathe. The child dropped the object. It clattered. A farming tool. The child ran. Kira sagged back slightly, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. No one spoke. Later, when the mission ended without engagement, her spotter finally exhaled. Good call. She nodded, but her throat felt tight. She realized then how close she had come, not to missing a shot, but to losing something inside herself that she might never get back. By the end of the week, people knew her name. Not officially, not in reports. In the quiet way soldiers pass information when they're trying to decide whether to trust someone with their lives. The Montana girl. The kid. The one who waits. Some said it with admiration, some with doubt. She heard the whispers when they thought she wasn't listening. She's too young. She hasn't seen enough. Give it time. Time, she was learning, wasn't generous. It took interest. On the fifth mission, she felt the shift in herself. Confidence had crept in, subtle and dangerous. Her body remembered success. Her mind began to expect it. She found herself scanning faster, settling quicker, trusting her instincts more than the process. It felt good. That scared her. During one engagement, she lined up a shot almost automatically. Range estimated, wind compensated, target clear. Her finger rested on the trigger. Her spotter cleared his throat softly. Confirm. Just one word. It slowed her down enough to notice what she'd missed. A second figure behind the target, not armed, too close. She eased off. The moment passed. Afterward, she sat alone behind the HESCO barriers, staring out at the mountains as the sun bled into them. She thought of her grandfather again, of his silence, of the way his eyes had gone distant when someone mentioned the war. Maybe he hadn't been haunted by what he'd done. Maybe he'd been haunted by how easy it had been to keep doing it. That night, she wrote in a small notebook she kept hidden in her pack. She didn't write about tactics or shots or distances. She wrote about fear, about the pressure of being relied upon, about the quiet terror of knowing that one bad decision would echo far beyond her own life, about how every successful mission made the next one heavier, not lighter. She wrote, "I don't want to become someone who stops feeling this." When she closed the notebook, her hands were steady. Not because the weight was gone, but because she was learning how to carry it. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the noise and fear and doubt, something hardened, not into steel but into resolve. She would not let the rifle decide who she became. She would, even if the cost was learning that the most dangerous distance wasn't measured in meters, but in how far you drift from your own heart. Why did the valley feel wrong even before anyone spoke? Kira sensed it the moment she lay down behind the rifle, not through the scope, not through the radio, through something quieter, a pressure in her chest that had nothing to do with altitude or nerves. The valley below looked ordinary, too ordinary. Smoke curling from cook fires, goats moving lazily between stone walls, men sitting in the shade, talking, waiting. Waiting was the part that bothered her. She shifted slightly, adjusting her position, letting the rifle settle into the earth as if it belonged there. Her spotter lay beside her, glassing slowly, methodically. Neither of them rushed. Rushing was how mistakes were born. The patrol moved below, boots crunching softly on gravel, weapons low but ready. They weren't new. They knew how villages worked, how calm could flip to chaos without warning. Still, Kira felt it, a wrongness that refused to name itself. "Range to far compound?" she asked quietly. 850, her spotter replied. "Wind light, variable." She nodded, already tracking movement. A man stepped out of a doorway. Older, gray beard. He leaned on a stick as if his leg hurt. He paused, scanned the street, then moved again. Her stomach tightened. She'd seen this before. Not the man, but the pattern. The way vague descriptions hunted for certainty inside a sniper's mind. The way the brain wanted to close the loop, wanted to finish the equation. Gray beard, limp, older male. Her pulse thudded once hard. She didn't touch the trigger. "Spotter," she murmured. "I want eyes on all entrances. Something's off." Seconds passed. The man disappeared inside another building. A child followed him, laughing, tugging at his sleeve. Kira exhaled slowly. "Good call," her spotter whispered. "Intel was thin on this one." Thin intel had killed people before, sometimes the wrong ones. The patrol finished without contact. No shots fired. No heroics. Just another village that might turn hostile tomorrow or never at all. As they exfiltrated, Kira didn't feel relief. She felt shaken. Because she realized how close she'd come, not to pulling the trigger, but to believing she should. The pressure changed after that. Her reputation had grown faster than her experience, and people noticed. Commanders began to expect miracles. Patrol leaders spoke her name with a strange mix of gratitude and reliance that sat uncomfortably on her shoulders. "You're our insurance," one lieutenant said with a grin before stepping off. Insurance, like she was a policy against bad luck. She smiled back because that was easier than explaining that luck had nothing to do with it. Inside, something twisted. She was careful, obsessively so, but confidence kept creeping in anyway. It slid into the spaces fear used to occupy. It whispered that she'd proven herself. That hesitation was doubt. That doubt killed soldiers. The next mission came at dawn. High-value target. Confirmed insurgent coordinator. Multiple sources. The kind of operation where success would ripple upward through command channels and failure would disappear quietly into paperwork. They took position early, climbing for hours through loose rock and thin air. By the time they settled in, Kira's muscles ached and her mouth tasted like dust. She welcomed the discomfort. Pain anchored her. Through the scope, the compound came alive as the sun rose. Men moved with purpose, weapons visible, radios, guards. This time, there was no ambiguity. "Target on the roof," her spotter said, matching description. Kira found him instantly, younger than she expected. Early 30s, maybe. He paced, speaking into a phone, unaware of how small the world had become. Her breathing slowed, the reticle steadied. Then she noticed the woman. She stepped onto the roof from the stairwell, carrying something wrapped in cloth. She stood close to the man, said something that made him laugh. She handed him the bundle. A child's jacket. Kira's finger stiffened. The rules were clear. The target was valid. Collateral presence didn't automatically negate engagement if the shot was clean. Clean. She adjusted slightly, calculated angles, distance, backdrop. She could do it. She hesitated anyway. "Take the shot," came the calm voice over the radio. "Command, watching from somewhere far away." Her spotter said nothing. He waited. The woman stepped back. The man turned away from her, still smiling, still talking. The opening was perfect. Kira took the shot. The bullet struck exactly where it was meant to. The man fell. The woman screamed. The sound carried even up the mountain. Kira flinched for the first time since she'd arrived in country. "Target neutralized," the radio said. "Good work." "Good work." She stayed behind the rifle long after the compound erupted into chaos. The woman knelt beside the body, rocking back and forth. Someone pulled her away. The jacket fell to the concrete. Kira's chest felt tight. She hadn't done anything wrong. She knew that. But knowing didn't quiet the noise in her head. That night she dreamed of Montana. Not of the ranch, but of the fields during drought, grass brittle and pale, cattle ribs showing through hide. She stood there with her rifle, but every time she raised it, the scope fogged. Shapes moved beyond the blur. She couldn't tell what they were. She woke with her heart racing. For the first time since deployment, she didn't want to go back out. The thought startled her more than the fear itself. She sat on her bunk, compass in her hand, watching the needle tremble with the vibrations of generators outside. It always pointed north. It never questioned. She wished she could be like that. The mistake came a week later. It didn't announce itself. It slipped in quietly, disguised as confidence. Intelligence flagged a Taliban regional facilitator moving between compounds. Description came down fast. Male, late 40s, limp, gray beard. Kira felt the echo immediately. She told herself it was coincidence. They took position at extreme range, over 1,400 meters, the farthest she'd attempted in combat. Wind gusted unpredictably, funneling through the valley like breath through teeth. Through the scope she saw him. He matched. Her spotter studied him longer than usual. Something. "I've got him," Kira said, sharper than she meant to. Silence. The radio crackled. Overwatch confirm. She confirmed. The shot was flawless. Technically. The man dropped instantly. Then the child ran into frame. Too small, too fast, screaming. The radio exploded. Civilian down. Repeat, civilian. Kira's vision tunneled. "No," she whispered. Her spotter swore softly, glass still up. "God, Kira." The ground team's voice came through, frantic. The man wasn't the target. He was a shepherd, elder, known to the village. The actual facilitator was still inside a building, unseen. Kira couldn't breathe. Her hands shook violently now, uncontrollable. She pulled away from the rifle like it was poison. The child's cries cut through everything. She had done this. Not because she was careless. Because she was sure. They pulled her from the line within minutes. Command decisions made fast and cold. The mission continued without her. She sat alone on the mountain, helmet in her hands, staring at the dirt. This time, there was no justification that helped. No clean language. No distance. Just a dead man and a child who would grow up remembering the sky when his grandfather fell. They grounded her immediately. Medical, psychological, command interviews. No one yelled, no one accused. That hurt more. In the small, bare room where she met the psychologist, Kira couldn't find the words at first. They piled up behind her teeth, heavy and useless. "I thought I was right," she said finally. The psychologist nodded, "And now? I don't trust myself." The admission felt like failure. But it was the truth. That night, alone again, she pressed the compass into her palm until it hurt. She wanted the pain, wanted something solid. True aim serves the heart. She finally understood what her grandfather had carried in silence. Not pride. Responsibility. And the knowledge that skill without humility could become a weapon pointed inward. She didn't know if she would ever be allowed back behind the rifle. What she did know was this. If she was, she would never confuse certainty with wisdom again. Because the most dangerous shot wasn't the longest one. It was the one taken when you stopped listening to doubt. Why did the quiet feel heavier when they told her to wait? The room was too clean, too white, the kind of space designed to keep emotions from leaving a mark. Kira sat with her hands folded in her lap, boots lined neatly under the chair, eyes fixed on a point just above the far wall. She had been there for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had stopped behaving normally since the mountain. Outside, helicopters came and went. Missions continued. The war didn't pause because she had broken something inside herself. A captain finally entered, closing the door softly behind him. Medical cleared you physically, he said. Command reviewing the rest. Kira nodded. She didn't trust her voice. The captain studied her for a moment longer than was comfortable. You understand why this is happening? Yes, sir. You know this doesn't erase what you've done right. Her jaw tightened. It doesn't erase what I've done wrong either. The captain sighed, the sound tired rather than frustrated. No, it doesn't. When he left, the room felt smaller. She rested her elbows on her knees and let her head drop into her hands. For the first time since arriving in country, she cried openly, silent, shaking tears that soaked into her sleeves. Not because she feared punishment, not because her career might be over, but because she knew she would carry that child's scream for the rest of her life. Days passed. Evaluations blurred together, questions repeated. How did you feel before the shot? During? After? What did you notice? What did you ignore? Kira answered honestly, even when the answers painted her in an unflattering light. I felt sure. I felt pressure. I didn't want to hesitate again. Each sentence felt like another confession. She stopped being the 18-year-old prodigy and became a case file, a lesson, a reminder that talent didn't make anyone immune to error. At night, she lay awake listening to distant gunfire echo off the mountains. Each shot felt personal now. Each one asked a question she couldn't answer. Was the war worth the cost? She didn't know. When they finally told her she was being returned to limited duty, she felt no relief. You'll operate in a support capacity, the major said. No trigger time, observation only. Yes, sir. He studied her carefully. This isn't a punishment. She met his gaze. It feels like one. Sometimes, he said gently, what feels like punishment is actually mercy. That night she watched another sniper team deploy without her. She sat on a crate near the motor pool, helmet beside her, rifle locked away. The weight of it all pressed down hard. She had wanted to serve, to protect, to matter. Now she wasn't sure what she was. Support duty was its own kind of torment. She listened to radio traffic from the operations center, tracked movements on screens, watched missions unfold without being able to influence them directly. She saw mistakes form in real time and couldn't always stop them. Once she caught a detail no one else did, a heat signature moving against the wind, too deliberate to be natural. She flagged it. The patrol adjusted. An ambush that never happened. No one cheered. No one even knew. She swallowed the quiet satisfaction and the lingering sadness together. Maybe this was what humility looked like. Weeks later, they called her back into the mountains. Not as a shooter, as an extra set of eyes. The mission was low profile, high risk, a patrol moving through contested terrain where air support couldn't reach in time. Every decision would matter. Kira lay beside a new spotter, binoculars in hand instead of a rifle. The distance felt wrong, incomplete. She focused harder. Movement patterns, absence. There, she said suddenly, top of the ridgeline, see how the shadows don't match. The spotter followed her gaze. Damn good catch. They adjusted the route, slowed the patrol, avoided a kill zone. Hours later, when the team returned safely, the patrol leader shook her hand. Thanks, he said simply. No praise, no ceremony. Just gratitude. It hit her harder than any medal ever could. That night alone again, Kira opened her notebook. She wrote about the mountain, about the mistake, about how losing the rifle had forced her to listen again. She wrote, maybe strength isn't being trusted with power. Maybe it's being trusted without it. The thought surprised her. For the first time since the incident, the weight on her chest eased, just a little. The call came unexpectedly. Command wanted her back on Overwatch. Not immediately, not alone. Conditional, probationary. Her hands trembled as she set the radio down. Fear rose first, sharp and undeniable. What if she failed again? What if doubt froze her when lives depended on her? But beneath the fear, something steadier emerged. Respect. For the rifle, for the decision, for the cost. She met with her new spotter the next day. Older, quiet, scarred in ways that didn't show on skin. "I hear you wait," he said, not unkindly. "Yes." "Good, waiting saves lives." They lay together on a ridge as dawn broke, the rifle finally back in her hands. It felt heavier than she remembered, more real. The valley below stirred awake. Kira breathed in slowly. This time, she didn't rush to find a target. She listened, because she finally understood. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choosing better when the moment returned. Why did the moment she feared most arrive without warning? The sun was already high when the radio crackled with urgency. Not panic, not chaos. Something worse, control stretched thin. A patrol had gone quiet in Sector Echo. No gunfire, no explosions, just absence. Kira felt it settle in her chest as she and her spotter took position on the ridge. Absence was never neutral. It meant someone, somewhere, had decided to wait. She lay prone behind the rifle, letting the familiar weight press her into the earth. The metal was cool against her cheek, solid, patient. It didn't rush her. It never had. Below them, the terrain folded into itself. Dry riverbeds, broken walls, narrow alleys where sound died quickly. A perfect place to disappear. "Eyes open," her spotter said quietly. "This one feels wrong." Kira nodded. She scanned slowly, deliberately, not hunting, listening. She watched the spaces between things, the gaps where movement should have been. A door that stayed shut too long. A rooftop with no laundry. A stretch of ground too undisturbed. Her breath stayed slow. Minutes passed. Then she saw it. A glint, not light, not metal. The absence of dust where a boot should have disturbed it. "There." "Hold," she whispered. "Sniper left ridge, about 1200. Her spotter swung his glass, stilled. "I see him." The enemy sniper was good, dug in, covered, waiting for someone to rush. The patrol below was frozen, pinned by uncertainty they didn't even know they were feeling yet. Kira felt the weight of it all press in. This was why they'd brought her back. And this was the moment she was most afraid of. The enemy sniper never revealed his face. He didn't have to. Kira studied the position, the angles, the wind curling unpredictably off the rocks. It wasn't a shot that rewarded aggression. It punished impatience. She adjusted slightly, then stopped. Doubt flickered, not the paralyzing kind, but the disciplined kind. The one that asked questions instead of offering excuses. Something didn't line up. "Wait," she said. The word felt heavy over the radio. Seconds passed. The patrol leader whispered urgently. They were exposed. Every delay increased risk. Her spotter glanced at her, searching her face. He didn't push. Kira watched again. Then she saw the second shape. Lower hidden, watching her. A decoy. Her pulse thudded hard. If she'd taken the shot immediately, she would have exposed herself. The real shooter would have fired. The patrol below would have paid the price. She swallowed. "Two snipers," she said calmly. "Primary is decoy, secondary is low right, give me time." Silence. Then copy. The trust in that single word nearly broke her. She shifted position by inches, calculated again. Slower now, more careful than she had ever been. The wind gusted. She waited. She thought of the child, of the mountain, of the cost of certainty. The secondary sniper adjusted, impatient. He thought he was invisible. He was. Kira exhaled. The shot broke clean and true. The enemy sniper collapsed out of sight. The decoy reacted instantly, too late, his position revealed. Her spotter fired. 2 shots, 2 bodies down. The valley went quiet. Below, the patrol moved again, cautious but alive. The radio erupted in controlled relief. Overwatch, that was beautiful work. Kira didn't answer right away. Her hands shook, not with fear but with release. She had waited, and waiting had saved them. After the mission, no one cheered. They didn't need to. The patrol leader found her later, helmet under his arm, dust streaked across his face. "We were dead without you," he said simply. Kira shook her head. "You were." "We were," he insisted. "You just didn't rush us into it." He left her with that. She sat alone on the ridge as the sun began its slow descent. The rifle rested beside her, no longer feeling like an accusation. She took out the compass again. The needle wavered, then steadied. For the first time, she didn't press it into her palm for pain. She held it gently. That night the dreams didn't come. Sleep found her quietly without struggle. When she woke before dawn, there was a calm in her chest she hadn't felt since before the war. Not peace. Acceptance. Word of the mission spread. Not loudly, not officially, but in the way that mattered. She waited. She saw what others didn't. She didn't panic. The labels changed. Not prodigy. Not kid. Professional. Kira didn't let it settle too deeply. She knew how fragile reputation was. She knew how quickly confidence could rot if it wasn't checked. On the next mission, she turned down a shot. Clear target, valid, but civilians too close, too many unknowns. The patrol adjusted, found another angle. Later, someone asked her about it. "You could have taken him." "Yes," she said, "but I didn't need to." The answer surprised even her. As weeks passed, she felt something shift again. Not confidence. Conviction. She trusted herself, not to be perfect but to be careful, to listen, to accept doubt as a tool instead of a weakness. The war didn't reward that kind of thinking often. But when it did, it saved lives. And slowly, quietly, it began to save her too. Because strength, she was learning, wasn't about never missing. It was about never forgetting what a single shot could take away. Why did the war finally feel quiet only when she stopped listening for applause? The mission had ended hours ago, but Kira still sat on the ridge, watching the valley breathe. Smoke from cooking fires curled upward in thin threads. Goats moved like slow punctuation across the land. Life continuing, stubborn and indifferent to the lines humans drew across maps. Her rifle rested beside her, bolt open, harmless for now. No one was calling her on the radio, no urgent voices, no countdowns. Just wind. She realized then that this was the sound she would remember, not the gunfire, not the shouting, the quiet that came after choosing restraint. Her spotter packed his gear without rushing. Before leaving, he paused. "You good?" Kira nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." He studied her a moment, then smiled faintly. "Took me 20 years to say that honestly." When he left, the ridge felt wider. The end of her deployment didn't come with ceremony. No final mission montage, no speeches. Just a flight manifest and a quiet handshake from a commander who had once doubted her, and now didn't need to say anything at all. As the aircraft lifted off, Kira looked down at the mountains one last time. They didn't look smaller from the air. If anything, they looked heavier, like they would always be there, waiting for someone else to learn the same lessons. She closed her eyes. She didn't feel pride. She felt relief. Home didn't recognize her at first. The ranch looked the same, weathered boards, wide sky, fence posts leaning the way they always had. But Kira moved through it differently. Slower, more deliberate, like she was afraid of breaking something invisible. Her grandfather's house stood quiet at the edge of the property. He'd been gone a year now, long enough for grief to settle into something dull and constant. She found his old workbench exactly as he'd left it, tools aligned, dust undisturbed. On the wall hung the rifle he'd taught her to shoot with. She didn't touch it. Not yet. Sleep was strange in those first weeks. Some nights passed without dreams. Others dragged her back to the mountain, the decoy, the child, the scream that had split something open inside her. She learned not to fight the memories. Fighting only made them louder. Instead, she listened. She began volunteering at the range in town, teaching basic safety. No stories, no war talk, just patience, just fundamentals. When parents asked about her service, she smiled politely and changed the subject. She wasn't hiding. She just didn't need to explain herself anymore. One afternoon, a young girl showed up with her father, thin, nervous, hands shaking as she held the rifle. Kira knelt beside her. "It's okay to be scared," she said softly. "Fear means you're paying attention." The girl nodded. They took it slow, breathing, posture, respect for the weight of what she held. The girl hit the target on her third try. Her smile was wide and unguarded. Kira felt something loosen in her chest. Not pride. Purpose. Months later, a letter arrived. No return address, official seal. Inside was a single page. Recognition for actions taken under fire, lives saved, leadership displayed. They didn't mention her age. They didn't mention the mistake. They never do, she thought. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Some things didn't need framing. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the fields gold, Kira finally took her grandfather's rifle down from the wall. She checked it, cleaned it, respected it. Then she set it back. She didn't need to prove anything to it anymore. The compass sat in her palm, familiar and worn. The needle steadied, pointing north. True aim serves the heart. She finally understood. True aim wasn't about the shot. It was about the choice. Years later, when someone asked about the war, about the shot that changed everything, Kira paused. She didn't talk about distance or wind or skill. She talked about waiting, about listening to doubt, about learning that strength didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrived quietly. Sometimes dignity didn't speak. It simply acted.